Well, James Lankford here. The State of the Union just finished up. For those of you that got a chance to be able to watch it, you'll know because you got a chance to be able to see it live. For those of you that didn't, I would tell you if you go back and watch it, you'll hear exactly what socialism really sounds like. The president tonight promised we're going to have much higher taxes on every single company. We're going to try to compel companies to come back, but when they come back from overseas, we're going to dramatically increase their taxes. And we're going to actually get government involved from everything from the price of drugs to the price of your hotel to the price of your concert tickets. He went through and made all these promises. Everything that annoys you, government's going to get involved and they're going to actually fix it. So that was jarring, to be able to say the least, to be able to hear this long litany of here's new areas that the government's going to get involved in. He made a comment that in some ways made me laugh and caused a great rumble across the room. I don't know if you could hear it at home when he said, we're going to use oil at least for a decade. No one thinks we're going to only use oil for only a decade. Oil is going to be around for a long time because there's no way to do any kind of energy transition in the next decade. So literally what he's saying is we're going to use oil for a decade. That means all of us that have a gas-powered vehicle or a diesel-powered truck, 10 years from now, you're not going to be able to have that if it's based on what he was just saying. We're going to use oil for a decade. Again, there were some things like that that just had no connection on it. I was very surprised, quite frankly, and disappointed in many ways. His immigration conversation tonight, I think, was about 30 seconds. And he said two things. The first one was, pass my comprehensive immigration bill, which, by the way, if you haven't seen his comprehensive immigration bill, is full amnesty for everyone that's in the country illegally and a very open border. That's his comprehensive immigration plan. And the second thing he said was, if you'll just give me more money for technology, then that's going to solve the border. Well, clearly it's not going to solve the border. It's the policies that is actually put in place. I had Brandon Judd tonight as my guest at the State of the Union, who's the president of the Border Patrol Council. There are practical things that can be done right now to be able to secure the border. They're just choosing not to. He also made the comment about deficit reduction and said as president, he's reduced the deficit $1.7 trillion and made it sound like this big deal. Here's the backstory on that. Yes, the deficit has gone down on him because it's coming off of COVID, but the interesting thing is he actually tried to spend $5 trillion more than he spent, and Joe Manchin and Kyrsten Sinema blocked him from that and dramatically reduced one of the bills that he had only to $1.5 trillion rather than $5.5 trillion. So he actually tried to dramatically increase spending even more, but then he took credit for him losing the fight and Kyrsten Sinema and Joe Manchin actually not voting for him in his $5 trillion bill. So it was hyperbole, to be able to say the least. Multiple other moments there in the room, and I don't know if you could hear it at home, but at one point in the room, he turns and says, you know, there are Republicans here that want to be able to end Social Security and end Medicare. There's a huge rumble across our side of the aisle because obviously this has been this hyperbole trope that he's tried to be able to pin on one person, that was Rick Scott, who has been clearly outspoken to say he's not trying to be able to end Social Security and Medicare. That he was taken out of context on a statement, but they continue to be able to run out this campaign statement and look at Republicans and say they're trying to end Social Security and try to end Medicaid, when that is absolutely not true. So there's this huge rumble in the room to be able to say, why do you do that? Why do you at one moment say you're a unifying president, in the next moment try to jump into things that you know just factually are not true? So there's a lot of that back and forth, and there was a lot of interaction within the audience tonight in that time. Obviously, the president's going to put his best foot forward and say that he's gotten all these great things that have accomplished. The American people will judge that in the days ahead. But there's been a tremendous amount of money that has been spent and a dramatic increase in spending beyond COVID spending because, again, last several years has been dramatic increase in spending for the emergency in COVID, but COVID was over when the President Biden actually came into office, and yet he wanted to dramatically increase spending on all these different programs. It's caused the inflation. It's caused the real problems that we have. Willing to work with the president, as I've said over and over again, on areas where we can find common ground, and there are things that must be done that we've got to be able to find common ground on. I was pleased to hear the president state that he's willing to be able to sit down and negotiate that. For the last 2 years, on the whole, the president's just run over half the country and has said your ideas don't matter. Now with the election that's happened in November, with the flip that's happened in the House of Representatives for this year and Republican control there, now the president has to sit down and be able to negotiate. One last thing. The president talked about the debt ceiling issue and said that the debt ceiling just has to be increased with no conversation about it. I adamantly disagree. We're at $31.5 trillion. This has always been my position. If we're not trying to change the status quo, if we're not trying to change the trajectory of where we are in our spending, we should sit down and do that even around a debt ceiling time. This is not about putting America's faith and credit on the line, but this is about trying to not just have a short-term game and a long-term loss. This is also long-term, that we've got to be able to stabilize our spending. If we don't get control of this now, there's no turning around. $31.5 trillion and accelerating is a major problem that we should actually have real conversation to be able to address. So adamantly disagree with the president saying just raise the debt ceiling and just keep going and ignore the debt. That's not the way that it needs to be able to go. We've got to be able to actually restore some fiscal sanity into the process. So let's sit down, let's talk it out, and let's work these things out together. Again, the president had missed some good opportunities to be able to outline some of the plan for what he's going to do to be able to actually deal with issues like the economy and how he's going to deal with issues like immigration. But we've got to continue to be able to find ways to be able to get the things done that need to be done for the nation. God bless you. Keep praying for the nation. As I tell people all the time, this is not the time to be pessimistic. This is the time to be able to pray and get to work.